For this first step, what we need to do is go to GitHub and create a repository. I went ahead and created mine, NiFi flow registry tutorial. And then what I want you to do after that is go ahead and let's create a file, a new file. And let's create it a level deep. We'll call it default / and then we can just put the old readme markdown, and we can just simply say something to the light of default NiFi flow registry bucket. You don't have to really do all that, but ultimately I need you to create that subfolder is really what I wanted to do. This default folder, you'll see that in just a second. So know your owner, Lester Martin in my case. NiFi registry is my repo, and then we want to switch over to our runtime. And what I did in the runtime is it'd be ideal to have two separate environments, two separate runtimes, but I just created two process groups, one on the left, simulated dev, one on the right, simulated production, and I'll just pretend when I'm in those process groups that they're different runtimes. It'll be functionally the same thing. To set up the registry client, go to the hamburger bar, controller settings, and there is a registry clients tab. Hit the plus to add a new one. We'll call it my repo. We want to make sure it's GitHub flow registry client, and it's reporting that some values aren't there, like repository owner and name. So let's go ahead and edit those right quick. Again, your values will be different. Mine's Lester Martin. This is probably public. Probably grab it, but it won't help you. Won't be able to commit in a minute. And I've already forgotten the name. It is right there. So let me just copy that. 1, 2, 3, 1. And that's that name. And the rest we can leave blank, and we can talk about those in a. Let's tackle the authentication type. I believe to a personal access token. We'll talk about all those in an advanced tutorial as well. All right, so I'm going to apply those. I'm going to go back to the top, and there we go. We're off and did our prepare the environment. We'll continue on with another step. So let's create our first flow and put it under version control. I'm going to drill into my simulated dev environment, and then we're going to version things at a process group level. So I'm going to create a process group. I'll just call it my flow, nothing special there. And then inside of my flow, I'm just going to add a processor, generate flow file. We're just going to create a little, simple flow here. It doesn't really do much, but update attribute, and let's drop a funnel at the end. And then I'm just going to connect these up. Boom, sure, boom, and boom. Now I have a valid flow. Nothing too exciting. I'm not going to run it. I'm going to go back up to my simulated dev environment, and now I'm going to bring this flow, because we do it at a version control, under versioning, and under right there in that context menu, I've got a start version control, as it might make some sense. So we launch that. There's the one repo that I have already set up. We're going to commit it to main. Sounds good. There's that bucket, and we'll see these more in advanced tab, advanced tutorial, but buckets are, clumps of things that we like to put together, and we're going to just use the same name for my flow, and you can put a description, comments, initial commit, something like that. All right, so let's save that off, and that's going to use that registry client that we did earlier. And guess what? It shows a green checkbox. We're under versioning control, and now you can even look, hey, change version, stop version control. So we brought it under version control. You can just go back over to our GitHub project here and verify that our changes are there. I see several commits, 4 commits over there. Some of these are the ones I did earlier. There's that initial commit we just talked about. And really all we added is the file, myflow.json. And you see the contents there. You can see it a couple different ways. Obviously, we can go back to the top of the project and then should drill into default. And there it is, myflow.json. Awesome. Now that we've got myflow committed to the repository, let's navigate back up. And here's where we're going to pretend and use our simulated alternative environment. So simulated production maybe. And this is the scenario where we're going to say, hey, I want to get a process group of flow for the first time from GitHub. So we're going to use the import from registry, as you see here. We'll drag and drop, and then lots of good checkboxes and things show up. The my repo is our registry. We're going to use that default bucket. and it went out there and looked and filled in what it could. It only found my flow, so it's going to say, yep, you want to use that, can keep the initial. Really, we're just saying, yeah, that looks good. So we'll go ahead and say import, and that's it. We're back to where we were before. We're showing that we're on the current version, and we're caught up. Deployed to production, let's go back to our dev time. Again, a simulated development environment. We're in our my flow that we have under version control. And let's just change a few things. Let's add under properties, let's add some custom text here. Some nonsense goes here. So we added a property value, sure. And just to keep it simple, why don't we also just change the name of this processor, new name for processor. And I think if we do that, that ought to be plenty to show that we've made some changes. And if you look at the bottom, you might see a little asterisk there that suggests there's some changes. We can go back up to one level up, and there it is. Again, that same icon, and we hover over it. It actually tells us, if I can get my mouse, there we go, tracking it, and local changes have been made. What's nice about that is we can actually go see those local changes. We just hit versioning, show those local changes. And really what we're going to see here is exactly what we just saw a minute ago. We changed the some custom text. Property value was added, and there's a new name for the processor, changed from update attribute to name processor. So we say, yeah, that looks right. What are some of the actions? We could definitely revert back and get rid of those changes. But what we would like to do is commit those changes. So we'll add a new commit statement, small changes. We'll go ahead and hit the save button on that. Expect that to push back up. It changed to a green checkbox, says we're up to current version. You can look at a few things while you're here. We can actually we don't want to change the version here, but I can show you that, yep, there's those lists of changes here. And why don't we go look and make sure they made it over to GitHub. So I'll get to GitHub. I'll do a quick refresh. We got 5 commits. Our most recent commit came in, small changes. And there are those small changes. There's the new name for that processor. There's, here we go, new name. It just echoes it in a couple places, a few places actually, it looks like. And then ultimately some nonsense goes here. That was the property value. So the changes are all there. It looks all real good. And we did our typical dev time, made a change, and committed it to the repository. Right, so our changes were committed in the development environment. So we'll navigate over to our production, our environment we're moving to, using that simulated group. And you might notice right out of the gate, there's a big icon change. It's a red circle or whatnot. But what does it say? It says a newer version of this flow is available. So let's go see what's going on. Version, change version. Well, what we can do is pretty much say, yeah, I see it. We're based on initial commit, and there's some small changes. So we're just going to say, yeah, bring those in. Let that run for a few seconds there. Our processor group version has changed. We hit close. We're actually back to our checkbox. It says it's all good. And there we can verify the new name of processor, etc. So easy breezy to make those production updates or environmental updates transitioning up from dev. We do have another environment, maybe a NiFi, such as this process group that I called the simulated non-connected environment, an environment we don't want to or can't set up a registry client. But as a human, we can still go find this registry, this repo out here in GitHub. What we could do is drill down to the flow that we want. Just go ahead and download that from there. And then we could, back on that non-connected environment, we could just use the old import mechanism that exists. I think we put that stuff in downloads. Downloaded it twice. I'll grab that one right there. And then, simply bring that in. Totally disconnect it with version control. Or if we wanted to start it fresh for some reason and we had version control, here's a place to kind of lift and shift instead of doing a classic fork, which would also work as well. So plenty of good options. The repository is good for those that are connected as well as others.